One of the most common complaints that you'll get from an audience of an educational presentation is that the presenter spent too much time talking about themselves before they actually got to the main content of their presentation. I've helped to create dozens of presentations for subject matter experts, and I've helped them to avoid this mistake so that they don't lose the attention and the respect of their audience before they actually get to the information that they intended to teach their audience, whether on a webinar or in a workshop or in a lesson inside of a course, etc. And in this video, I'm going to give you that framework for how to structure your story that you tell at the start of a presentation to help build trust and authority with your audience without repelling them because you took too long to tell it or you told it in a way that just wasn't relevant and valuable to your audience. Now, before I share this framework with you, I actually want to tell you a quick story just to help illustrate how important this concept is. So several years ago, I was moderating one of the breakout sessions at a conference. So it was a room that had maybe 100 people in it, and we had 1 hour for a speaker to come in and share an educational presentation on a specific topic that was relevant to the people at that conference. And here's what happened. They showed up a couple of minutes late. Then they took a few extra minutes to set up their laptop and get their presentation started. So we're already about 10 minutes in to the 1 hour time slot before they start presenting. And then they spent about 35, maybe even 40 minutes of their time sharing their personal backstory. And they hadn't even gotten to the content that the audience was waiting for until there was only about 15 to 20 minutes left for that breakout session. So by the time he got to the actual educational content in his presentation, he realized that he had used up way too much time and he was going to run out of time. So there was no way he could cover everything. So he rushed through some of his content and he skipped some really valuable slides that the audience members would have really appreciated him having the time to cover. And then there was no time for Q&A because he went right up until that 60-minute, the end of the 60-minute time slot, and then he was done. And we had to quickly set up for the next speaker to come in and do their session. And after he was done that presentation, I had one of the audience members come up to me and tell me that that was the worst session they had ever sat in on at any conference they had ever been to in their life. And the reason that I received that feedback was because that presenter, even though they didn't have bad intentions, for whatever reason, they just thought that they were supposed to share their life story or their backstory before actually getting to the main content. And they spent way too much time on that story that wasn't relevant and wasn't valuable to the audience, and then they didn't leave themselves with enough time to actually cover what the audience wanted to learn from them, and that created a negative experience for the participants in that room. And that is exactly the type of feedback that I'm going to help you to avoid receiving from your audience whenever you give an educational presentation. So on that note, let's jump into the framework. Okay, so the type of story that I recommend telling at the start of an educational presentation is what I like to call a context story. And a context story does not have to be very long. This is not your life story or your career history. It is a short story that can typically be told in under 5 minutes, sometimes even in just 1 or 2, that you share with your audience before teaching them a specific method or process. So its purpose is to provide context on why the information you're about to share with them is relevant and valuable. And it has a very specific job to do. So a well-structured context story will transfer certain beliefs to your audience. And those beliefs are that you understand a specific outcome, a desirable outcome that they are trying to accomplish, that you understand the challenges and the frustrations that are getting in their way of accomplishing that outcome, that you have a unique approach or process that can help them to overcome those challenges and get that result that they want, that you have proof that your approach or your process works because it either worked for you or it worked with other people or clients or companies that you helped through that process. And finally, that your approach or your process can help them to achieve their desired outcome faster and easier than doing it on their own. By transferring these beliefs to your audience at the start of your presentation, you establish enough trust and authority with them to earn their attention for the rest of your presentation. So if you fail to transfer these beliefs at the start of a presentation, they are much more likely to kind of drift off or get distracted or not pay attention or not even use any of the information that you share with them during your presentation. So now I'm going to give you a structure that you can follow for creating a context story for your educational presentations. So the first part of the story is the circumstances. So you are just going to quickly describe the circumstances where the story begins. That might be a specific time or a place or a role that you had in your life. For example, whenever I give presentations about the subject of content planning, I have a specific context story I like to tell, which begins with me joining the marketing team of an early stage startup as their content marketing manager back in 2016. So that's the setup of my context story. I just take them back to the start of that story, describing those circumstances. Part 2 of your context story is the desired outcome that you were trying to accomplish. So here you're just going to quickly describe the result that you were trying to achieve. And this is the same result that your audience wants to learn how to accomplish. And so in my case, with that particular story, I'll usually say something like, I was hired to create content that drove measurable growth for the company, right? That was the outcome that I had to figure out how to accomplish. In part 3 of your context story, you're going to describe the challenges that you faced that were making it harder for you to achieve that desired outcome. So you're going to list some of those limitations, some of those problems that you had and your audience likely has too, that were getting in the way of you accomplishing that desired outcome. So in my case, because I was working for an early stage startup, nobody handed me the playbook on how to create content that grows the business. I wasn't sure what type of content to create, and so I just had to kind of figure it out along the way. Part 4 of your context story is describing what you did to overcome the challenges that you were facing. So in my case, I spent 3 years creating hundreds of pieces of content and experimenting with lots of different content types to see what kind of results each of those types of content helped to accomplish for that company. Part 5 of your context story is the discovery. So this is the aha moment that led to you figuring out a new or a better approach for solving those challenges and getting the desired result. So something that I figured out in that journey of creating hundreds of pieces of content was that different types of content achieve different objectives. And so for that reason, there's no one-size-fits-all content strategy that will work for every business. We need to customize what we're creating based on the objectives that we're trying to accomplish. And once I figured that out, I was able to prioritize specific types of content, knowing that those types were in alignment with the objectives set out by the company. Part 6 of your discovery story is the outcome. So here you're going to describe the results that you achieved after implementing that new approach or process. So within 3 years, by getting really, really intentional and strategic with the types of content I was creating, I was able to drive over 1 million website visitors to that company's website and use content to acquire several thousand new customers. So sharing those metrics provides the proof that what I implemented worked and gives people a reason to trust that what I'm about to share with them is based on real experience and not theory. And the final part of your context story, part 7, is what I like to call the tie down. So here, this can generally just be a quick question where you're confirming your audience's excitement and understanding of the value of the outcome. So I might say something like, hey, can you see how having a content strategy that is customized to your business and goals can help you to create faster growth for your business? And our intention here is just to create a nice transition before we move into the main content, the main teaching section of our presentation. So we're kind of just tying a bow on our context story, but also checking in with the audience to make sure that they got it, that they got the message, they can see the value in what you're about to teach them. So again, by giving you this structure to follow for a context story, my intention is to help you avoid creating the experience where you took way too long to tell a story, or you told a story that was not relevant, not valuable to your audience, and didn't do a job of earning their trust and their attention before you transition to the main teaching section or the educational content in your presentation. If you want access to the document that I was sharing during this video, there will be a link to it just below. And I'm also going to link to a worksheet that you can use to fill in the sections of your context story and come up with a context story for each of your educational presentations. You might have different topics that you teach or different webinars or different workshops, etc. And so the cool thing about a context story is that you can create a unique one for every one of the presentations that you've got. Again, this is not your career history. This is not your life story. This is not a structure that you would use for like a keynote presentation or a motivational presentation that's all about you. This is a structure for a story that you use when the purpose of your presentation is to teach a specific topic to your audience. And we just need to tell a quick story up front to make sure that we earn the trust and the attention of our audience before we start teaching them. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions or feedback for me, please leave a comment below. And if you've been enjoying these videos and you want access to more videos, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you get the notification as new videos are published.